No money, no home, no one to call. 8 months pregnant, skipping meals, walking 4 miles to work. Just to survive, one more day. She didn't ask for rescue, but rescue came anyway, wearing expensive shoes and a face she had spent months trying to forget. The question wasn't whether she could trust him. The question was whether she had any choice left. This channel is home to the stories that live between love and danger. Tales of powerful men learning what truly matters, of women who survive the impossible, and of families that hold together when everything tries to tear them apart. Remember this: strength isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to keep going when fear is all you have. Hit like if this pulled at your heart. Share it, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from tonight?
Natalie learned that in New York, you stay invisible to survive. At 23, she was a ghost, her dreams buried under the weight of her reality. A manager's voice snapped her back. A VIP needed service, and it was not a request. Natalie simply nodded, adjusting her uniform. She worked events where security outnumbered the guests. After losing 2 other jobs, she needed the money and the anonymity. In a city of 8 million, being nobody was a valuable skill. She moved through the lavish ballroom with practiced ease, her tray steady. The club screamed old money, making her feel every imperfection. Still, one good night's tips could pay for a month of food. She spotted table 12 and the men seated there. They were still, watchful, and clearly not official security. She then saw him, a king at the center of his court. He was young, maybe 30, but carried the weight of a lifetime. When he looked at her, the world stopped. She placed their drinks down, her pulse racing. "Can I get you anything else?" "Your name," he said, his voice silencing the table. "Natalie," she answered before thinking. He repeated her name slowly. "I am Adrian." She should have left, but his gaze held her fast. He leaned back, his eyes still fixed on her. "Tell me, what do you dream about?" The question was jarringly personal. She tried to deflect with a joke about wanting her shift to end. "Liar," he said, not as an insult, but an invitation. She retreated, but his voice followed her, a confident promise. "I will see you again, Natalie." The rest of the night, she felt his gaze on her, a constant, unsettling presence. It was not threatening, but it made her feel seen for the first time in years. When her shift finally ended, her manager approached. "The VIP wants you." Her stomach tightened. "Which one?" "The one who owns this building." She was warned not to keep him waiting. She should have run, but a dangerous curiosity pulled her forward to the private elevator. The suite was pure luxury, with a view of the entire city. Adrian stood waiting with 2 drinks. "You came," he said. "You asked." She stayed by the elevator, ready to escape. He moved toward her with a controlled, dangerous grace. He was even more intimidating up close. "You are afraid of me," he stated. "Should I be?" "Probably," he admitted with startling honesty. He offered her a drink. "What do you want?" she asked. "To know you." He then revealed he knew about her other jobs, her online classes, and the money she sent home. It was invasive and terrifying. She put her glass down, her escape plan fading. "That is invasive." "I know," Adrian said, giving her space. "I needed to see if you were real." "In my world," he explained, "everyone wants something, usually power or revenge. But you saw me as just a man." His words settled between them. He confessed he built an empire on loyalty and blood. But seeing her made him realize he wanted something more than power. The smart choice was to leave. But his confession mirrored her own deep loneliness. One drink, she decided. That one drink became the start of everything. They connected on a level she never expected, sharing deep fears and hopes. He told her hurting her would be pointless and tragic. When he pleaded with her to stay, her defenses crumbled. So she stayed. The kiss felt like a release from 6 months of loneliness. Morning brought a harsh reality and crushing regret. She quickly dressed and fled his apartment, her heart pounding. Her phone showed a terrifying text from her boss, Marcus. In his office, Marcus delivered the news like a death sentence. Adrian was the head of the Caruso Mafia family. The city feared him. Natalie's world tilted. For the next 2 weeks, she lived in pure paranoia. Work was a welcome distraction, but soon nausea and exhaustion took over. A pregnancy test revealed 2 pink lines. She knew instantly she was keeping the baby, and she knew she had to hide it from Adrian forever. Her plan was born from panic and a mother's determination. She found a cheap fourth-floor walk-up in Queens. She changed her phone number and quit her job, erasing every trace of her old life to protect her new one. Marcus was distressed when she left, not understanding the real danger. The isolation was overwhelming, but Natalie forced a new routine. She worked 2 jobs to make rent. Her baby's safety was the only thing that mattered. Natalie tried to focus on her survival in New York City. She was pregnant and alone, carrying a dangerous secret. The baby's father was a criminal. At her office job, she endured whispers and suspicious looks. But at the grocery store, her manager Rita asked directly, "Do you have any support?" Natalie admitted she was handling it all by herself. Rita studied her with a kindness that felt like a lifeline. "You tell me if you need anything," she offered, and that simple gesture meant the world. Just as she was barely managing, an eviction notice appeared under her door. She had 60 days to move out. A frantic search for a new apartment began, but everything she could afford was either unsafe or unavailable. Her small savings were no match for the city's rental market. One night, crying on her bathroom floor, she felt the baby kick for the first time. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered, her hand pressed against the gentle flutter. The next 4 weeks were a desperate race against time. Natalie worked every possible shift, skipping meals to save every dollar. Still, she was rejected by 14 different landlords. Her body, strained from pregnancy and hunger, started to fail her. She grew dizzy and weak. Rita noticed immediately. "You are running yourself into the ground," she said sharply. "That baby you're carrying deserves better." The truth of those words stung. Before Natalie could reply, her vision faded to black. She woke up on the break room floor with Rita calling for help. Refusing an ambulance she couldn't afford, Natalie let Rita take her to a clinic. A doctor confirmed she was severely undernourished. Later, Rita drove her home and saw the "for sale" sign on her building. "I have a cousin in Brooklyn," Rita said quietly. "She rents rooms cheap. Want me to call?" Overwhelmed with gratitude, Natalie started to cry. But the hope was short-lived. The room was already rented. With only 2 weeks until her eviction, Natalie finally broke down. Hiding in a bathroom stall at her office, she sobbed, apologizing to her unborn child for failing. She didn't hear the door open or the footsteps approach. She only heard the voice she had tried for 6 months to forget. "Natalie." Through the gap, she saw a pair of expensive shoes. It was Adrian. He had found her. His voice was steady through the door. "Please go away." A deep anger was hiding underneath his calm tone. "I searched for you for 6 months. I am not going anywhere." Natalie's hands trembled as she unlocked the door. He had found her. The lock clicked. Adrian Caruso, New York's most feared man, stared at her pregnant stomach in total shock. "Is it mine?" he asked sharply. She was tired of running, so she whispered the truth. "Yes." The word hung in the air between them. His jaw tightened. "How long have you known?" 5 months, she admitted. His hands clenched into fists. "You knew you were carrying my child and said nothing?" "You make problems disappear," she said, her voice shaking. "What was I supposed to think?" Adrian finally looked at her closely, noticing the dark circles under her eyes and her loose clothing. "When was the last time you ate?" Natalie could not remember. "I am not starving myself," she snapped. "I am trying to survive." She told him about the cost of rent and doctors in the city, about working 3 jobs just to get by. "You never gave me a chance to help," he said quietly. The truth of his words landed heavily between them. I was protecting our baby from your world, she confessed, meeting his angry, hurt eyes. I read stories about men like you and what happens to the women and children in their lives. What stories? He asked, his voice dangerously soft. She spoke of women who vanished and families that were torn apart. Those women were not carrying my child, Adrian said, moving closer. Do you truly believe I would let anyone harm our baby? The question was impossible to answer. It does not matter now, she said, her hand on her stomach. You are right, he agreed, his voice firm. And now, you are coming with me. He explained that her eviction was in 2 weeks and she had nearly collapsed. His driver would be there in 5 minutes. You cannot just kidnap me, she protested. I am taking the mother of my child somewhere safe, he replied, his expression softening. Please, let me help. Adrian's offer was a trap and a lifeline all at once. She was exhausted, and their baby deserved better than this. If I agree, she said, I have conditions. Name them, he replied instantly. I am not your prisoner. I can leave when I want. Agreed, he said. And you do not make decisions about my body or try to take this baby from me. The pain on his face looked real. I would never do that to you, Natalie. Desperately, she wanted to believe him. Okay, she whispered. Relief washed over his face. He offered her his hand, and after a moment she took it. The drive to his home was a silent blur. Natalie sat in the back of the luxury car, wondering if this was survival or surrender. The baby kicked, and she knew her answer. This was for survival. The car stopped at a towering glass building in Tribeca. They rode a private elevator to a stunning penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows. The guest room is this way, he said, leading her to a room bigger than her old apartment. I need you to eat, he told her gently, returning minutes later with a tray of soup and toast. Eat all of it, he ordered. You are very bossy, she noted. You are very stubborn, he replied with warmth in his voice. Why did you really run? He asked as she ate. I was scared. She put her spoon down. That night with you felt real. Then I learned who you were, and it felt like a fantasy. It was not a fantasy, he insisted. You are a crime boss, Adrian. Your world is built on violence. And what kind of life do you want? He asked. Something normal, safe, a life where my child will not be afraid. Our child will never be afraid, Adrian said firmly. I protect people that the police cannot. Sometimes protecting people means getting your hands dirty. And what are your rules? She challenged. His voice turned to steel. No drugs, no human trafficking, and no harming innocents. Natalie studied the criminal kingpin who had held her so gently. He admitted he had people who handled his dirty work now. Instead of terrifying her, his brutal honesty made her feel secure for the first time in months. This was either instinct or insanity. He thanked her for staying, then left her alone in the lavish room. Pregnant and confused, she finally slept without fear. In the morning, the smell of coffee woke her. She found Adrian in the kitchen, casually making breakfast. The domestic scene was jarring. He insisted she eat, serving her a perfect meal. Then came the power play. He had already found her a top doctor and called her job to arrange a leave of absence. She bristled, needing to maintain some control over her life. You had no right, she told him. To her surprise, he gave her a genuine apology. He admitted he was used to solving problems his way and had not considered her feelings. His sincerity disarmed her. She needed to get her things from her old apartment. Adrian refused to let her do any heavy lifting, instead hiring movers to handle everything. Back in Queens, the daylight made her tiny apartment look even more hopeless. Adrian stated the obvious, this place is a death trap. She knew he was right. The crumbling walls and shoddy wiring were a constant source of fear. This terrible place was all she could afford, and seeing it through his eyes was humiliating. Sitting on the worn-out couch, she finally told him everything. She described the constant fear, the missed meals, and the crushing loneliness of the last 6 months. When she finished, he didn't offer pity. Instead, he took responsibility. He promised her that she and their child would always be safe. He explained that his enemies knew that harming his family was a death sentence. His voice was cold, but his promise was absolute. She desperately wanted to believe him. That afternoon, the doctor's office was a world away from the clinics she was used to. As the ultrasound began, Adrian instinctively took her hand. She didn't pull away. Then, a tiny, perfect person appeared on the screen. The doctor announced they were having a boy. Natalie looked over and saw tears streaming down Adrian's face. Seeing this powerful, dangerous man weep with joy shattered the last of her defenses. "We're having a son," he whispered. Later, at an exclusive restaurant, he asked her a dangerous question. "What do you truly want for yourself?" She hesitated, then found her courage. She wanted to be seen as a person, not just the mother of his child. She admitted she wanted to feel the way he made her feel, both safe and terrified. He looked at her with genuine care. "You have never been invisible to me, Natalie," he said, "and when I promise to protect you, I will always mean it." "My world is dangerous," Adrienne began, "but I can protect you. You and our child get everything." Natalie hesitated. "And if I want you?" He promised her that too, but on her terms. He then explained why he had searched for her. "That night," he confessed, "you made me want to be a better man." When he disappeared, he thought he had lost that chance forever. Adrian took her hand, admitting he failed her. "You ran because you saw a monster," he said, asking for a chance to be different. "I'm scared," Natalie confessed. "So am I," he replied. "Of failing you again." They agreed to be terrified together, and in that moment, honesty was enough. Their new life in his penthouse began, slowly blurring the lines she had drawn. She saw both sides of him, the violent and the gentle. He woke her at 3 in the morning with bloody knuckles and no explanation. Yet, he hired a tutor for her online classes. "Our son deserves a mother who achieves her dreams," he told her. She realized she was falling for the real, complicated man. Then, one night, an important phone call changed his entire mood. When he returned from his office, his face was like stone. "Someone used my business to threaten us," he admitted. He told her the brutal truth. Anyone who touches them will die slowly and without remorse. Instead of fear, she felt a powerful sense of safety. "Okay," she said quietly, trusting him completely to protect them. She finally accepted their strange, dangerous love, and for the first time, she believed in their future. 3 weeks later, after a perfect ultrasound, that belief was tested. Leaving the doctor's office, Adrian's happy expression vanished in an instant. He spotted a threat in a black sedan, and the predator inside him immediately emerged. "Get in the car now," he ordered quietly. He put her in a town car with his driver, Marcus. "I need to handle something," he said before closing the door. She watched as he walked toward the other car while two dangerous men got out. After the car pulled away, she spent 2 anxious hours waiting for him to come home, hoping her trust was not misplaced. He returned to her bruised and bloody, but alive. The relief made her knees give way. He poured a whiskey and explained it was a message from the Vulov family. "They found you to show me they could." His voice was cold rage. "They made a mistake they will not make twice. I made it clear you are off limits." "Are we safe?" she asked. He held her close and swore that no one would ever touch her, and she believed him. But fear crept in later that night. They had been watching her. She woke from a terrible dream to find Adrian sitting by her window. He admitted he was also afraid. He was terrified that his dangerous world would get her killed, that their son would grow up without a mother. So she looked at him and said, "Then help me understand it. Stop shielding me from the truth." So he told her everything about his world. He explained the delicate balance of power between the families. "The Vulovs are new," he said, "and they do not respect the rules. They think you are my weakness." He met her gaze. "And they are right. You and our son are the only weakness I have. Therefore, I must eliminate them completely. It means war. This is not your fault, he told her. But you are the catalyst. He promised the war would be over in a few weeks. He just needed her to trust him and stay protected. She agreed, but asked for a promise. When this is over, you have to step back from the violence. She needed their son to have a father, not a monster. I promise, he said. When this is done, I will build something our son can be proud of. Then he told her that he loved her, completely and forever. The war began 2 days later. Their home became a secure fortress. Adrian was gone for long hours, returning with exhaustion on his face. How bad is it? She asked one night. He simply replied, We are winning. The Vulovs are losing badly. Their operation is failing. Adrian, looking weary, promised Natalie the war would end soon. He then made her vow to take their son and vanish if he was killed. His genuine fear was terrifying. She agreed, and he pulled her close, promising a safe future for them. Then, on a Tuesday, everything changed. Adrian rushed in, full of triumphant relief. It is over, he said. Viktor Vulov surrendered. He explained that the Vulovs were leaving New York for good. He was ecstatic, telling Natalie that they were finally safe. But her relief turned cold. She had to ask, what did you do to make him surrender? Adrian confessed he had taken Victor's innocent brother, Dmitri, as a hostage. He said he would never apologize for protecting her. Natalie felt a chill, realizing how different their worlds were. While glad they were safe, she admitted she was scared of how easily he made such choices. Adrian insisted that none of it was easy for him. Adrian explained he had to shut off his feelings to survive, but she made him want to be better. Natalie asked him to remember their son would learn from him. He promised to teach their son a better way and to build a legitimate life for their family. They confessed their love, finding a moment of peace as the baby kicked between them. Their peace lasted only 5 days. As Adrian was happily talking to their unborn child, a man named Antonio Marches interrupted them. He announced that the commission, which oversees all operations, was not pleased with how Adrian handled the Vulovs. He demanded Adrian attend a meeting, dismissing any personal inconvenience. A man named Marches eyed Natalie, calling her the reason for a war. She stood tall, declaring she was the mother of Adrian's child. Adrian later explained the commission, a council of families, was angry he acted alone. Natalie insisted on going to his meeting. She was tired of being protected and demanded to see every part of his world. He finally agreed. The meeting felt like a trial. 5 older men sat as judges. They accused Adrian of using a personal matter to crush his competition. Adrian's voice was calm. He explained that the other family had threatened his own, and that always comes first. He said he simply solved a problem for everyone. The men exchanged silent, unreadable looks. The commission demanded $5 million and control of his ports. Adrian's tone turned to ice. He refused. The ports were his. He declared that if protecting his family was a problem, then he would operate outside their rules. After a tense silence, Marches agreed, but warned that Adrian had used up all his goodwill. Next time, there would be severe consequences. In the car, Adrian confessed that his defiance was a massive risk. He was now either very powerful or very vulnerable. But the ports funded their safety, and he had to protect her. Natalie took his hand, urging him to start building a legitimate business now. She wanted him to show everyone he was moving beyond that life. The very next morning, Natalie found Adrian already making calls. He was selling his criminal operations and buying a legitimate shipping company. He explained his plan to be 70% legal within a year and completely clean in 5. They had to build something that could not be taken away from them. Adrian explained that legal businesses have protections that an empire built on fear does not. He could not afford to show weakness, not with a baby on the way. The weight of becoming a father in just 4 weeks settled on them. He admitted he was terrified. His own father was not a good role model, and he had no idea how to be a good dad. Adrian finally spoke of his father, calling him a violent and cruel man. He confessed that at 21, he killed him to end the abuse and take over. He now fears becoming the man he hated. Natalie reassured him, saying his fear is what made him different. He held her close, telling her that no matter what happened, he loved her and their son more than anything. The morning calm shattered when Marcus appeared. He told Natalie someone was watching her. Then he showed her surveillance photos of an expert stalker. Marcus warned her that Adrian would insist on a complete lockdown to keep her safe. Adrian was just as fierce as predicted. He forbade Natalie from leaving, not even for her doctor's visit. He would bring the doctor to her. She felt like a prisoner, but he insisted it was protection. The genuine fear in his eyes made her agree to a lockdown, but only for 2 weeks. "You have 2 weeks to figure this out," she finally said. He agreed, promising to find whoever was watching her. The next day, Dr. Chen arrived and confirmed the baby was healthy. "You're looking at delivery within the next 3 to 4 weeks," she said with a smile. Natalie was filled with both excitement and terror. Later, in the nursery, she asked, "Are you scared?" He pulled her close and said, "We'll figure it out together." Then he revealed the truth. "The man's name is Thomas Garrett. Antonio Marcus hired him to see if you are a weakness. I will make it clear that you and our son are permanently off limits. I am not going to kill him, just erase him. By morning, his entire empire will be gone. I meant what I said. No one touches my family. The commission will see what happens when they test me. We are leaving for my house in the Hamptons. We will stay there until the baby is born. You and our son are the only things that matter now. Everything else is just noise." His ruthlessness should have terrified her, but instead she felt completely safe. They drove to a stunning house in the Hamptons, a modern fortress overlooking the ocean. He held her close, talking about their future, about a safe and happy life together. It was a life she was finally starting to believe in. For a week, their new life felt surprisingly normal. That peace was shattered by a single phone call. Adrian's face turned to stone as he listened. His penthouse had been hit by a professional crew, a clear message sent. He immediately told Natalie he was moving her to a secure safe room in the basement. His voice left no room for argument. He promised to be back from the city by nightfall. Natalie was then escorted to a basement bunker by 4 armed men. The hours passed slowly as a deep fear grew inside her. Marcus, the head of security, offered only vague updates. As sunset came and went, her anxiety turned into dread. He was not back as promised. Marcus finally admitted there was a problem. The attackers were not working for Marches, but for a new and unknown enemy. Adrian finally walked through the door at 3:30 in the morning. He looked like he had been through a war, his shirt torn and blood on his hands. He told her he had found them. This was not about business, he said. It was personal. He confessed that his father's cousin had sought revenge. "I had no choice," he said, his hands shaking. "Am I just like my father?" She took his hands. "No, you care about breaking the cycle. That makes you a good man." He pulled her close and finally cried. "It's over," he whispered. "We're safe. No more enemies," he promised as they watched the sunrise. "Just us." For a moment, Natalie felt hopeful. Then, a sharp kick from the baby made Adrian laugh. "He is as impatient as you," he teased. Seconds later, she gasped as her water broke right there on the sand. "Adrian, it is time." His calm vanished. "But you have 2 more weeks." The drive was a chaotic blur of phone calls and sharp breaths. As they raced toward the city, Natalie gripped his hand, trying to remember how to breathe. The 10-minute trip felt like an eternity of pain. At the hospital entrance, Dr. Chen greeted them calmly. "Looks like someone is eager to arrive." Hours later, Natalie was exhausted and ready to give up. "I hate you for this," she panted at Adrian during a contraction. "I know," he soothed. "Just keep pushing." With one last effort, a powerful cry filled the room. The doctor placed their perfect, healthy boy on her chest. Through tears, Natalie whispered, "We have been waiting for you." Adrian wept openly in awe of their son. Their joy lasted only a moment before the door burst open. Marcus and Adrian immediately shielded the baby. A hospital security guard stood there, his hands raised. "Sir, there is a situation. People in the lobby are demanding to see you. They are claiming family rights. Adrian's face turned to stone. How many? We see 4. He then looked at Dr. Chen. Discharge them. Now. The doctor protested. She just gave birth. She needs to be safe more than she needs rest, Adrian insisted. Understanding, the doctor agreed. 20 minutes, and I want them back in 48 hours. Done, Adrian commanded. Marcus, secure the private exit. While nurses moved quickly, Natalie held her sleeping son. Who are those people? She asked. I am about to find out, Adrian said, his voice pure ice. A few minutes later, Marcus returned with a tablet showing security footage. Natalie recognized Antonio Marches instantly. He is claiming the commission has authority over you and the baby, Marcus explained. He says you are being held against your will. Adrian's voice was sharp. Tell security to remove them. Then he turned to his exhausted wife. We have to confront them. You must tell them this is your choice. Now? Natalie pleaded. Adrian, I just had a baby. If we do not address this now, they will claim you were forced, he said gently. It will give them the power to make our lives hell. Natalie looked at her son's perfect face and felt a fierce resolve ignite inside her. Okay, she agreed, but you stay right beside me. They took a private elevator down to the chaotic lobby. When the doors opened, the entire room fell silent. Marchese, Adrian's voice cut through the tension. You are trespassing. We are concerned for Ms. Brooks, Marchese declared, his eyes on Natalie. She is leaving by choice, Adrian stated, then looked to her. Natalie summoned all her strength. I am here by choice, and I am leaving by choice. My son and I are safe and exactly where we belong. Marchese sneered. You are being manipulated. We can offer you protection. I do not need your protection, she said, her voice like steel. If you or the commission ever approach my child again, I will go to the media and I will destroy you. The threat silenced the entire lobby. Adrian stepped forward. You heard her. Get out. This is not over, Caruso, Marchese snarled. Yes, it is, Adrian replied, his voice deadly quiet. It ended the moment you threatened my son. Marchese stared for a long moment, then turned and walked away. The drive back to the penthouse with their newborn son felt unreal. She watched the city pass, feeling stronger than she ever had before. I'm going to make this right, Adrian promised. The first night was a blur of feedings and an exhaustion that was bone deep. Their new routine was exhausting, but full of love. Dr. Chen visited and declared both mother and baby were thriving. In the nursery, she found Adrian holding their son. We need to name him, she said. He wanted a name with no family baggage, just his own. He smiled. James Brooks Caruso. They named their son James Brooks Caruso, a bridge between their two worlds. But their peace was short-lived. Just 6 days later, Marcus delivered awful news. The commission was filing a lawsuit, claiming she was a captive. To make matters worse, the story had already been leaked to the press. Adrian explained that this was a public stunt. Marches was trying to create pressure, force him to negotiate and give up power. When asked what he would do, his answer was certain. He planned to prove their family was legitimate and that the commission had no control over them. He would do it by telling a story they could not twist. He looked at Natalie, a question in his eyes, and said, "Marry me." The proposal was both shocking and perfect. Natalie's breath caught in her throat. This was his solution. He insisted it was not just a solution, but what he truly wanted. Adrian knelt by her chair, confessing his love for her and their son. He wanted to build a real life with her, not because of any outside pressure. Looking at the man who had changed her world and protected her, then at their sleeping baby, she said yes. His smile was brilliant. He insisted on a proper wedding, not a rushed courthouse affair. She agreed, but said they had to announce it immediately to get ahead of the story. Within 2 hours, they had drafted a press release. Natalie wrote her own statement, declaring that this marriage was her choice. The public response was immediate and huge. News outlets everywhere ran the story, but the tone had changed. It was no longer a scandal, but a modern love story. In the face of this new narrative, the lawsuit from Marches completely fell apart. A week later, Natalie told him, "You won." He corrected her. "We won. You were the one who made it clear this was your choice." She replied, "It was always my choice." He put his arm around her shoulders and promised to keep his word. He was getting out of the family business. It would take 3 to 5 years to divest from his operations without causing chaos. Then he mentioned something else. He had been asked to start a foundation, using his money to help kids from backgrounds like his. The idea was so perfect, it brought tears to Natalie's eyes. Adrian said it was her idea, that she had inspired him to become a father their son could be proud of. He pulled her close, telling her he loved her. Standing there, watching the city lights, Natalie felt a deep sense of peace for the first time in a long while. They knew the road ahead would be tough, but they would face it as a team. The wedding took place 3 months later at their house in the Hamptons. Natalie wore a simple dress, and Adrian looked sharp in a tailored suit. Their son James was held by Marcus during the private ceremony. Only a few close friends attended. Adrian's vows were filled with emotion. He promised to protect and honor her, to be a good father, and to choose her every single day. Natalie's vows were simple but powerful. She said, "I choose you. I choose this family. I love you." As they kissed, James made a happy noise, and all the guests laughed. The tension that had defined so much of their relationship was finally gone. At the small reception, they danced on the deck as the sun set over the ocean. "Happy?" Adrian asked her. She admitted she was terrified by how happy she felt, always expecting something to go wrong. He assured her they had already made it through the worst part. Of course, life was not that simple. The following year brought challenges, from a fussy baby to the slow process of Adrian leaving his old life behind. But those times were balanced with moments of pure joy, like James's first smile and his first steps. They watched Adrian transform from a dangerous man into a loving father who read bedtime stories. On James's first birthday, they launched the Brooks Caruso Foundation for Youth Opportunity. Adrian dedicated himself to helping others. He told Natalie one night, "You were always capable of this, you just needed a reason." He looked around their home, a life built from nothing. He was proud they had survived the chaos and the danger. Adrian was thankful she saw the man beneath the monster, and that she chose to fight for their future. 5 years later, their life was blessedly normal. She picked up their son James from school, his gold star, the biggest news of the day. At dinner, Natalie watched her family and felt a powerful wave of gratitude for their journey. Watching their son sleep, Adrian quietly asked about having another child. They agreed, making a calm choice, not one born from crisis. He thanked her for saving him, and she knew they had truly saved each other. Natalie remembered the fear she once felt. It had transformed into courage. The man she once ran from now made pancakes for their son. Their life was not simple, but it was theirs, built on trust and shared victories. She realized the best stories are never the easy ones. They are about the fight for something better, and building a family from the ruins of the past. Hers was a story like that. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.